Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this draw along session this morning, and we're very lucky that we've got our in-house illustrator Jessica Hartshorn with us this morning. For those of you who I've not met before, my name's Fran Stovold and I'm the Workforce Development Lead for Sporting Heritage. So I run our webinar programme, our networks and our conference. As some of you may be aware, February for us is our inaugural Art of Sporting Heritage Month. So we're running a whole raft of activities and sessions linked towards art featuring sport in its broadest sense. And we thought we'd have this practical session with Jess. So Jess, I'll just do a quick bit of housekeeping and then I'll hand over to you to lead us. So hopefully our tech should be with us today, but if for any reason the tech fails at your end, just log back in using the link that you've got and I'll keep an eye on the waiting room. If the tech goes at our end and the whole session goes down, I will contact everybody and let you know whether we can get back up and running within the time frame or whether we need to reschedule. It's really informal today, so there's going to be lots of chatting. So just jump in whenever you want. You can just take yourself on and off mute as you see fit. We are recording the session today, so you can turn your cameras on and off as you're most comfortable with as well. So I think that's all I need to say. Jess, can I hand over to you?
Absolutely. So welcome everyone. If I've not met you before, my name's Jessica Hartshorn. I'm an illustrator, so I illustrate for Sporting Heritage, but also I'm a freelance illustrator, so create children's books, and mostly I specialise in illustrating for museums, galleries and heritage sites. So what we're going to do today, don't be too nervous. So if you're not a professional drawer or even great, don't worry. We're going to do a range of different activities. I'm also going to sort of chat and feel free to ask questions as we go along. I've got a lot of experience working in gallery spaces as an actual practitioner. So I worked in a museum and gallery as an education officer for over 13 years. And that meant that I actually delivered a lot of drawing sessions and art related sessions in physical museum spaces and gallery spaces as well. So we'll probably touch on those little bits as well. Right, so let's get started. I'm going to just swap my screen over so you can see my notepad. So bear with me. Okay, so just let it focus a little bit. I'll just zoom you out a touch. Can everyone see my wiggly fingers? Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do to start off with is we're going to do a little warm up just to get our fingers and our brains warmed up as it's first thing in the morning. This is a really great activity, or a few warm up activities that you can either do yourselves on Zoom with groups, or in person. So I do this actually in galleries or schools as well. And we're going to start off with your pencil and paper. We're going to put some lines down our paper, sorry. So we're going to start in the middle, and we're just going to do a line down the middle, do a bit like a cross. So we've got 4 boxes. Okay. And what we're going to do in each box, we're going to think about textures. And this works quite nicely with collections, because most of our collections are made of lots of different materials. So this is something you could do walking around the museum space or looking at objects that you have, handling objects. So I'm going to say a word, an object, and you're going to think about what the texture of that would be or what it would look like. And imagine you've got a magnifying glass and you're looking really, really close up of what that texture would look like. So we're thinking about maybe marks and lines and shapes that we could use to represent that texture. So I'm going to start with a really easy one. Okay, so a woolly sheep. So in your first box, let's have a go at doing some shapes that if you zoomed in, it would look like wool. Okay, so you can copy me to start off with if you're not sure. So all I'm going to do is fill my whole box with swirly shapes. So we're imagining we're zooming in, looking at the texture of that woolly sheep and what shape. And there's no right or wrong answer to this, because obviously everyone will see or think about this in a different way. But the reason we do it is because when we draw, one way of differentiating from one object to another is adding marks and textures. And that helps it to look like the thing it's meant to be. But also, when these are complete, they can be coloured in or added with a bit of paint and make your own little bit of artwork as well. Okay, do some big ones. How are we going with that? Okay, right, okay, so I helped you a lot there, didn't I? I'm not going to help you so much now. So the next one is an alligator's skin. So how might you draw the scales of an alligator's skin? If you zoomed close up with your magnifying glass, how might you draw? So for me, in my head, this is what I see. I see U shapes that join across our page. You might have a different idea. There might be different shapes for you. And then a bit like bricks, we swap over. So when I do this with children, I give them an opportunity to draw it themselves first, but then if anyone gets stuck, I'll start to show them my interpretation of it. Go all the way if you like. Okay. I actually normally do 6 boxes when I do with kids, so the boxes are quite big here actually, aren't they? So don't worry if you're not filling your whole box. It's quite a relaxing activity though, because we're doing lots of repeat shapes. Okay. So our next one is water. So I want you to think about the sort of water that you're imagining in your head. So is it calm and still, or is it a wavy, crashing waves and splishing and splashing everywhere? Because obviously the lines that we draw, if it's very calm, will be different to something that's crashing and splashing about. So I'm going to do a really wavy piece of water. So in this, I'm going to do waves like this all the way across. Your waves might be different, and that's okay. Brushing and splashing around. We're starting to develop a range of different patterns. And if you've got a range of handling objects, this is quite a nice thing that you could then get those handling objects out and say, right, can you see any of these textures represented on those objects, or then draw those textures on the objects. So I was just in a school this week, we did this activity and then we created some artwork, and then we kind of went back to these and said, okay, so you're doing waves, so let's look back at our wave mark making that we made and how can we use that. So it's a bit like a reference sheet as well. Okay, so our final one is a plank of wood. So if we zoomed in on the wood, what would the lines or shapes look like? So you might have knots in the wood, which might be sort of more circular, as well as lines. So I would draw it. There's some lines that are longer than the other. Maybe a twirly knot. A few more lines. There we go for 9. And then we should have 4 very different patterns. How did you get on with that? You're welcome to talk. Okay, or a thumbs up? Yeah, fine. Helena's doing great. Excellent. Christian, how are you doing?
Very good. Yeah, it's interesting to think about handling objects and how they can be interpreted this way.
It's a nice conversation because obviously a lot of schools in particular study materials as part of their science. So it's a good way to kind of link into some of the curriculum and, you know, start those conversations about materials. So not just what, you know, is it cold? Is it smooth? Is it rough? And then we can start to draw those in a visual representation of those. Okay, can I see your drawings? Is anyone brave enough to show their drawing? Go on, there's only a few of us. Oh, lovely, Helen. I'll stop my screen share so I can see. Oh, fabulous. Some really good crushing waves. Oh, I like the scales. Yeah, lovely, Christian. Fabulous. Okay, so we're going to do another one now. This one is, again, it's a bit of fun. I always actually do this one just before we're about to start. Let me just share my screen again. Yeah. So this one we do with our eyes closed. And again, I say it's a bit of fun. It's a good kind of icebreaker when the children don't know each other. And what we're going to do is I'm going to say a shape or a specific object, and we've got to try and draw it with our eyes closed. So it's quite tricky, but it's a lot of fun and the kids find it hilarious because I think I'm often the worst because I actually keep my eyes closed and the kids often peek. So let's give it a go. So we're going to start really simple and we're just going to do a circle with our eyes closed. So are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Let's close our eyes and draw a circle and see if we can actually join up the other end of that circle. That's the tricky bit. How did you get on? Mine looks like a spiral. Okay, we are going to try a square this time. So close our eyes and off we go. Nearly. Okay, and the next one, let's move my paper over. I'm going to do an apple. So we've got a few different elements to this. So you've got your apple shape, which might be sort of circular-ish. You might want to do a little stalk and a little leaf. So the kind of key is trying to get those to join together and not be on different areas of the paper. So let's give that a go. We're going to close our eyes again. And we're going to do your apple shape, stalk, and your leaf. Oh, that's not too bad. Hey, how did we get on? Is it actually resembling anything like it's meant to? So this, depending on the group and the age and all that sort of thing, you can keep going with this if they're engaged in it. So for example, you might want to draw something in your collection that's not too complicated, or you could do something like a cat or a face. So we'll do a face next. So again, it gets harder by adding more different elements that are not joined together, because as soon as you take your fingers or your pen off the paper, then is it going to go back in the right sort of area? So that's why it gets trickier. So let's have a go at drawing a face, a really simple sort of cartoon style face. So if we close our eyes, draw the circle for the face, add some eyes, add perhaps a little nose and a mouth, some ears somewhere, and maybe some hair, and then open your eyes and see. Oh dear, kind of quite Picasso-like, mine. But it's a lot of fun, and it generally, if it's a new group of people that don't know each other, it's quite, the kids will talk to each other and say, oh, look at yours, or look at that, or I've done this, and it's a really nice little icebreaker. And it obviously doesn't matter if you can draw or not at all, because it won't look right either way. So it just breaks down those barriers a little bit. Okay, so that's the last one of our warm-up drawings that we're going to do. There are a few others you can do though. I'll just stop sharing for a minute. So another one that I do is not taking your pencil off the paper. So you might have heard that before. That's quite a common one. So you might say, draw a picture of yourself, a portrait, and the whole time you keep your pen on the paper. So even for the eyes, you don't take it off, you keep it on and join. And it's quite tricky, you automatically want to take it off, so it's a bit of a challenge. So that's quite a nice little warm-up activity. Another one that works quite well with quite young children is I tell a story and I get them to draw the shapes of that story. So an example, and I'll just hold it up here, is I call it taking your line for a walk. So you might say, okay, we're going to go up a hill, we're marching up a hill, and they have to draw a sort of a visual representation of that. Oh no, we're jumping off, oh, and then we draw, and they draw that. We're falling into the sea and it's really choppy, so we sort of draw the sea. Right, we're going to go through a jungle and we're whizzing through trees, so then you might do a wiggling shape. So they're basically drawing a bit like a map, I suppose, bird's eye view. We might do hopping on stepping stones, and we do sort of circles, but it's just a little bit of fun again. And again, you could link it to your collection, so tell a story from your collection, and they draw that in that sort of way. But it's keeping it very, very simple, and hopefully more accessible for more people. Yeah, so that's just another one. So at this point, before we actually get on to doing our kind of, don't say proper drawing, but a more finished piece, I suppose, has anyone got any questions that they'd like to ask me at this point, or anything about any drawing or in your collections or anything?
Can I ask you which collections you've worked with before and how they varied? Have you had specific collections or very general collections?
Oh, I've worked with so many over the years. So yeah. I worked in Rugby Art Gallery Museum. I've worked in other ones as well, but I worked there for 13 years, so mostly there. That was a social history and a Roman collection. So we had, I suppose most social history is quite similar, isn't it? You know, so Victorian collection, elements of collection, canal boats. It's quite a big industry in rugby. It's called BTH, British Thompson Houston. So we had lots of engineering works, it's big rail networks. I've worked with rail collections. And then as a freelancer, I've worked again with different ones. So Egyptian collections, done quite a lot of work with Gunnersbury Park Museum recently. So they've got a range of different social history. Vikings I did for them, and some Stone Age bits. So yeah, I've done, I wouldn't say most things, but quite a lot. I went up to the Golf Museum before Christmas at St Andrews, and I've been working with their collection as well. So so a lot of sport, and the Paralympic Heritage Trust, so a lot of sporting collections. And when I was still at rugby, I also managed the education for the World Rugby Museum there, the Hall of Fame there for players. So yeah, lots of collections, and I love them. And I still get excited when I get a little email in my inbox with, you know, photos of collection. I'm working with Nuneaton Abbey at the moment, and I'm drawing lots of nuns and sort of Abbey related collections, which I'm loving. So yeah, it's a joy. Any other questions? No? Okay, right, let's get into drawing our first object. So what I've done is I've got 3 different objects that we're going to, or 3 different things I should say, not all objects, that we're going to draw today, and we've linked them to the Winter Olympics as it's taking place at the moment, and we've also linked some of them to the Winter Olympic elements, as I think on that's the day, isn't it? Am I right, Fran? Today is part of the arts month. So I'm going to swap my screen again. Okay. Can you see my screen? Yes. So don't be alarmed. It looks scarier than it is, but it's not. So when I do all of my drawings, I break them down into shapes. So each thing that we're going to do, when it's broken down, a little bit like building a wall, we're starting off with a first brick and building and building and building. So I'm just going to get a bit of paper to put on top. So I'm going to put on top just so I can, because I'm going to be talking, I get distracted. So I need a little bit of guidance of what I've drawn already. We're going to draw with the medal first, because that's probably the easiest thing. So again, think about shapes as we do each thing. So we're going to draw the medal itself, which is a circle. So let's start off with that. So if you get your pencil and paper, let's draw the medal. Go round for a lovely big circle. Simple as that. And to make it look a little bit more 3D, we're going to take from just above the sort of 12 o'clock, or just to the side of 12 o'clock, so probably more like 1 o'clock. We're going to go around, just create a little edge. So you're following the other line that you've just drawn. And we are then going to go in a little bit as we get to about 9 o'clock on your circle. And you can smooth that in a little bit like that. So I'm drawing in black pen just so you can see it on the screen. Now what we can now do to make it look even more 3D is do some lines downwards. So imagine sort of straight down, and that starts to give it a little bit of depth and a bit of weight. So it looks heavy because the material that it's made of is metal. Like that. Okay, so that's our first bit. The next bit we're going to draw is the bit that's attached to the ribbon. So we're going to, from about 1 o'clock, we're going to do a little N shape like that. And then a little bit lower down, we're going to do the same again, a little N shape, a wide N. And then we're going to connect those 2 points together like that. The arch is what makes it look more 3D, as if it's rounded. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, so the next part is the ribbon. And if you imagine, the ribbon's going to come through that bit that we've just drawn. So I'm going to start at the bottom point now of your N and do a wiggly line. This is the slightly easier bit. Just going to do wiggly line. It can be any shape, any wiggle that you like for your ribbon. And you're going to take it up and then back around towards your medal. And it's going to finish at the bottom bit of the N that we've drawn at the top there. So as if it's going to go through the middle of that sort of tube. Okay. Do tell me if I'm going too fast. I can't see your drawings. Okay, right, so the next bit is we're just going to follow those lines again, but this time we're going to go at the other end, if you can see there, that N shape. So we're going to go around and follow that line as neatly as you can. It's a little bit like that game where you have the hoop and you've got to follow the line without getting electrocuted. You're going to try and follow it as neatly as you can. All the way around. And we're going to stop off at the top of your little tubey bit. Okay. And what we can do is make that look a bit more 3D. And the way we do that is go to right to the far end of your ribbon, and I'm going to draw just a small line down like that. And then we're just going to follow this edge here to about there. And that will make it look like we can see more of that part of the ribbon and make it look a bit more 3D. Like that. Okay. And we're going to do the same on the inside as if we're looking sort of at it from a certain angle. So another line. So we should have 3 lines. Like that. And again, with colours, it's probably easier to do this, but you can do a few lines, but we're going to do them differently. So we're going to do them diagonally. And again, this gives it depth. The reason I'm doing them diagonally is I want to make it look different to the ones on the medal. So a little bit like we were talking earlier with those mark making textures, is the texture is going to be different on the fabric to the medal. So we want it to look slightly different. So what I might do now is do lines the other way to make it what we call a cross hatch. And that will help it to look different to the medal. Yeah. What we could also do is add a few creases into the fabric. So if you just sort of dotted lines. And I'm going to do the cross hatch on the inside. Yeah. Now, if you've finished that element, do tell me if I'm going too fast. We're going to draw what's on the medal. And that's a nice bit about linking to your collections, because you could choose a medal in your collection that you could work from, or it could be linked to, so obviously we've got the Winter Olympics at the moment, so you could link it to a national theme or something like that. So we're going to do, I'm going to do a number 1 for first. So I'm just going to do a sort of 3D style 1 on there. Like that. And then maybe some patterns around the outside. So I'm going to do some wiggly lines. Maybe a couple of circles. Make it look jazzy. How are we doing? Yeah, Christian's done. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. So if you would like to share your medals, I'd love to see them. So if you're doing workshops online, this is a good way to take photos. Oh, wow, fabulous. Looking good. Excellent. So yeah, often if I'm doing online workshops, it's a good screenshot to sort of get everyone to hold them up. And again, if you've not got photo permission, get them to, hold it over their faces. And that's, oh, lovely, Helena. Fabulous. Excellent. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is linked to the Winter Olympics, and it's a little bit trickier, so I started you off quite easy. We are going to do bears rather than humans, just because they're a little bit easier to do. That's a really good tip, I find. If someone's struggling to draw or scared of drawing, certain animals are a little bit easier because of the shapes that you use. So like circles or rectangles and that sort of thing is their base shape. So I often do animals to start off with until they're a bit more confident. Often it's just a perception thing that people say, draw a human sort of thing, and they're like, I can't draw people, where for some reason they can draw a cat, or so it's just that barrier thing, and then building their confidence up over time. When I do draw alongs, actually it's slightly less scary because they just follow what I do sort of line by line, but depends on the sort of workshop that you have. Just a few other sort of general tips for drawing and creating art within spaces. Obviously, you've got to be careful with the materials that you use in your physical spaces. However, if you are able to draw in the actual galleries or museum spaces, I do encourage it because it's really lovely to be near to the real objects. So obviously things like just pencils themselves, or sometimes cutting out shapes and then doing a bit of what we call placement. So you might cut in advance some shapes of, say, for example, it's a ceramics gallery of Roman pots. You could in advance create those shapes for the children, and they could actually place different things together to create a new objects, or cut out photos and put new things together. So creating a new image it could be on a tray, for example. And you don't have to even glue them together. It could just be what we call a placement activity. So they have a tray and they have lots of different bits that they just place, and you might then photograph it, and then they do something else and move to another spot. So that's quite an easy, especially if you've got curators that are like, don't touch anything, don't take any materials in or anything like that. It depends on your spaces, but there are ways around it. So that's one thing. Another thing is to go back to the material side. So rather than saying, go and draw this specific object, it could be, can you find something made of metal? Can you draw that? And then you look at maybe shiny materials and how you would shade those. It could be that you say, can you find something that begins with a letter? So it doesn't always have to be prescriptive, because then the child can perhaps find something that they feel comfortable drawing. So it might be that they feel that's easy. Whether it is or not is a different thing, but if they're attracted to something, it's because they feel relaxed enough to do that. And I think that's quite important in anything to do with art, is confidence. So if you can build that confidence by giving them a bit of choice. Sometimes people don't want choice and they want to be told, and so to have a backup list of this is what you could do and here's an example of how, so you kind of meeting those different learning needs is really important. Okay, right, any other questions at this point? No. Shall we crack on to the next drawing? Oh, you eager beavers, let's go. I shall share screen. Okay, so the next thing we're going to draw, and don't be frightened, we're going to draw an ice hockey player. For the Paralympics, it's actually sledge hockey. So it was adapted, it's in the 1960s. It was in Stockholm, and it's a little bit like the old-fashioned sledges where there's the metal trims either end and this sort of sledge bit underneath. And yeah, it's other than that, it's similar to normal ice hockey, so, or mainstream ice hockey, should I say. Right, so we are going to start with the head. You can just about see that there. And again, we're going to think about shapes. So we're going to start off with the helmet, and we're going to do, I use letters to help people understand the shapes more. So we're going to do quite a large N shape. So up and over, like that. Start off with. And then we're going to join it with a bit like a U shape, but sort of really wide U. Again, this makes it look more 3D. If we drew a line straight across, it would sort of flatten it. We're going to do the little bit next where you look out through your visor and protect your face. So that's going a line across, but we're not going all the way, we're leaving a little gap. We're going to do a line down. We're going to do that widened U shape again, following the line underneath. And up. So you've got like a bit like a funny shapes rectangle, a bendy rectangle. Okay. And we're going to draw his little eyes looking through. So I'm just going to do a little dot, So it's our bear. It's going to have a little nose. And the nose is going to be an upside down triangle. Like that. Could also be an astronaut at this point. Okay, so what we're going to do now, so he doesn't look like an astronaut, is we're going to put the sort of grid bit that goes over the face. So these are just lines going down. I'm going to put the eyes sort of in between them. It looks like it's in jail now. So the eyes there, in between the lines. I'm just going to check my drawing. And a line sort of coming right between the centre. Like that. Okay. We're going to add his ears. So they're going to go either side of his helmet. So he's got a special helmet, so his ears can pop through. Got some little holes. So a little hill like that, and a hill on the other side. And you could do the inner bit of the ear with a tiny little sort of C shape. Like that. And the head is done. Okay, so we're going to move on to the body now, and he's got a lot of padding on to protect him. So what could be a hair? We're going to do the arms, and we're going to go round his shape to create that big padding effect. So a big arch around, put that there. And we're going to go across to his hand area. And then start to go back up towards his head, like a little bit of a rounded line, like that. Stop about there. Okay. And then we're going to go to the other side. So if you imagine an invisible line from the arm you've just drawn, take your pen across, and that's where you're going to start on the other side. So same again, but the other way around. So big arch, a line where the hand's going to be, and a sort of rounded shape going up towards the head. Okay. Now we don't have to draw hands. This is great because he's got big not mittens, but the big sort of gloves they wear. So from where your sleeve ends just a little bit in, so it looks like it's actually coming through the sleeve. We're going to do our mitten shapes, which are rounded shapes. We're going to do a little thumb and then go back in like that. And then we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. So come in a little bit, so it looks like it's actually coming out of the sleeve. Round, little thumb, and back in again. And then we want to draw his belly or his shirt. So I'm going to do it just below where the sleeves are. So about here, where his thumbs are. One of the key things with any drawing that you do is to really emphasize looking. So especially, we all do it as adults and children, that we guess what we see. So we look at something and then we actually use what we think we know to draw it, use our memory to draw it. We don't actually look. And one of the key sort of disciplines is to sort of really look. So you're putting your pen to pencil, then you're looking back again to check, and you're looking all the way through your drawing. That actually helps you to properly see what you're drawing. And you can do things like measure, like I just did with the top of the arms, really measure your spaces. So when you're drawing in real life, you can say, right, well, my nose here, if I put lines up there, that's where my eyes start. Or my ear, if I had a pencil, I'll just stop this share so you can see properly. So for me, my eye sort of starts where my top of my ears are. But there's lots of measurements when you sort of actually look at it. So with your eyes, it starts at the end of your nose. But also just looking at objects around you. So if I was drawing me and I was looking at where that picture is behind me, I can see from my eye, that's where it starts. So it's always sort of comparing what it's next to and where it fits. Because that guessing thing, people just guess and they'll probably draw the picture over here. They don't actually look and compare it to other things. Does that make sense? A little bit complicated, but it is about saying, well, that finishes here, so then that must start there, and really looking, not guessing. Okay, so let's go back to the picture. Okay, so we're going to draw the legs next. So he's seated in his little sleigh, and we're going to start, where should I start? We are going to start from the mittens. So we're going to draw a line from here to about here, where the legs are going to be. So our outer leg here, like that. And because we've got the perspective element, we're not going to go sort of straight across, we're going to come back to a point. So sort of narrowing in like that. Okay, then do a line down the middle to show the different legs. And we can do sort of a widened U shape for the sort of crotch area. Okay, I'm going to add the feet. So I'm going to do like an N shape, big widened N. When I mean N, I mean widened and not like a very neat handwriting and so a big bump. Okay, and that means his sort of feet are sticking up. And then the actual sleigh bit that he's sat in, it's a bit like the cage again, so it's some bars. So we're going to just draw 2 lines, again, like a rectangle, very thin rectangle. How are we doing? Yeah, good. Okay, so the bottom of the bar comes down like a T shape, it will look like now, like that. So another thin rectangle. And then we're going to do like a U shape And again, follow that line to make it look 3D. That's the end of the sort of sleigh bit. Okay, and what we're going to do now is just the final bit is add the bit of sleigh. So I'm going to come down, create sort of a upside down triangle shape, and then draw a line along his legs to attach it to that bit we've just drawn. And then we're going to do another line just because it's quite thick. So do another one there. Like that. And we're going to we're going to draw some marks to make it look dense, because we want to show that that's the bottom. It's got lots of shade under there and it's quite heavy. So I'm going to do some lines down like we did on the medal. Obviously, if you're colouring or painting or collaging these in, you can add some of those textures and sort of weight with that. But if it's just line, you can represent it by doing marks like this. You can also use things like dots. I'm going to put a few dots on his shoes. And again, by doing different marks, we show the materials are different. Okay, how are we doing? Good, yeah, excellent. Okay, so now's the fun bit. So you can decorate however you like his t-shirt. So you might want to do, I don't know, a team you support or a country that you support in the Winter Olympics. So it could be a number, it could be a flower, could be a shape, could be whatever you like. And I'm going to give him some elbow pads as well, because I know they wear their elbow pads in case of fall. So let's do 2 lines there, the elbow pads. And any other little bits and bobs you want to add on, you can do that now. I think he has some straps on his legs, so let's do that. I'm going to do a star. I feel like we need some Tony Hawk music in the background. Do, 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 do. I can't remember what it goes like actually. Oh, I've just realised we've not done the hockey stick. So when you finish that little bit, I'll give you 1 more minute to finish your own kind of decorations, and then we'll add in the hockey stick. Okay, are you ready if I do that, or are you still doing your decorations? Yeah, okay, I'm following you, Chris, because you're the only one I can see. So thanks for the thumbs up there. Right, so I'm going to do the hockey stick. It's going to come between that thumb and sort of mitten area. So we're going to draw a sort of rounded shape at the end and then a thin rectangle there, like that. And then we're just going to follow down. So remember, looking, we're going to follow that line there. So make sure it joins. And a long line till we get to the bottom, and then we're going to curve it up. Do a straight line across, curve it back down, and then go back to the hand. I'm going to do a few, because it's sort of flattened on that end. I'm going to just do a few little lines to show that that's sort of a flatter area. And to make it look like he's moving, we could do the age-old movement marks like that, a little bit like the speech marks. And so he's not sort of just floating in midair, we want to sort of ground him. So we're going to do a line, like a background line. So just above the glove area, do a line here. And again, that invisible line there, carry it on. There, like that. Now, in your spare time, you can really go to town on the background if you like. Draw a crowd, you could do a goal, but we'll leave it as that one for the moment for today. Okay. So how did we all get on with that one? It's a little bit trickier. Yeah. Can I see? Is anyone brave enough to show me? Oh, fabulous. Sporting heritage. Oh, Canada, Christian. Yeah, fabulous. Really good. They're all very good. Do put these on social media and share them. Oh, Great Britain. Fabulous. Oh, he looks very cute. Lovely. Right, so I think we'll just do those two drawings today because we've only got 5 minutes left. But have you got any other questions or anything else that you'd like to ask me as a sort of both an illustrator or artist, as a practitioner?
Is anybody doing these sorts of activities with their collections at the moment? I'd be interested to know.
We're not really. We did do like a series of illustration workshops in lockdown with an artist that we've got a couple set up as well for this summer for the Women's European Championships in football. We'll be sharing, but we I don't think I'm certainly not as creative when it comes to these ideas. So some of the ideas you've given me are great because we usually sort of stick to the same tropes at the Football Museum when it comes to like the drawing and illustration sort of side of things. So I think like looking at textures of the handling objects in the collection sounds really great. How have you found doing them online? Is it trickier, I suppose, the class?
Not too bad. It's a bit bizarre. I think I remember you did a talk actually, Christian, I think last year about the talking into the void thing. So that's quite weird. If I can't see the drawings, it's quite tricky because I don't know where people are. You know, like if you're actually in a classroom, you can go, right, well, they're not quite finished yet, I'll wait. Where I can't see, so I have to kind of, if no one tells me, I have to guess. So that's the only tricky thing. I ran, so I don't know if you know, but in lockdown, when lockdown started, a few days before the actual lockdown, I said online on all my social media, I'll do some free draw alongs on my Facebook Live, you know, for a few days to, you know, people are going into isolation, just help people out. And then we went into proper lockdown. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it every day, thinking it would be, you know, a week or something. Then 10 weeks later, so that actually was a massive learning curve. I went to just putting them, pre-recording them and putting them on YouTube, and you know, start a YouTube channel. But just in terms of, it's a little bit easier now because I didn't have my visualizer, but I don't know if you can see, I've got a visualizer that I use. A lot of classes have them now as well. At the time I was just doing it all on my phone with well, propping it up, and now sort of proper held thing. But it was things like knowing not to cover the artwork, because you know, you draw in a certain way and often you're covering what you're drawing, and it took quite a bit of time and practice to actually do this, which is actually quite awkward. And that's actually why I pencil out a lot of the drawing in advance, not because I can't draw, thank goodness, but actually because I'm having to draw quite awkwardly. And then I realized doing it a few times without penciling complicated things out that it looked really bad, but just because I was having to kind of do this. So that's sort of a tip if you're having to do it online yourself, is don't be too worried about doing really like pencil of where you're going, just because it is quite tricky if you're trying not to have your hand in the way to draw really well. But also if you're not great at drawing, then you could trace something and draw over it for the session, just to kind of guide them. A few just tips I think you sort of saw as I was going along. I try and use shapes or letters to help people understand the rough shape of where I'm going, the direction I'm going. So W's and M's and O's and curlicas, the C's are quite good for if you're doing ears or mouths and things like that. And yeah, just taking it step by step. So building it up starts with your warm-up, so getting everyone really relaxed, doing something quite simple, and then building it up. And if somebody then feels they can't do the harder one, they've still done something, and then they might drop out at that point. Obviously you do find with online people might dip in and out, and that's fine. I did a series of workshops, I think it was 6 weeks last October, with SEN children through an organisation, and that was another interesting learning curve, because attention spans are very, very different for each child. So I had to think of lots of different sort of techniques, again because it's online, it's trickier because it's harder to see what's happening, like are they engaged or not sometimes, but also you're not physically there to like give them something else to do or whatever. So I just broke it down into lots of small sort of 5-minute activities that they could do, and actually they were all on the whole they were all engaged. The only thing that was tricky was them keep taking themselves off mute, and while I was trying to explain, some of them were trying to sort of get my attention and things, which was lovely, but that was quite tricky to manage when you've got a bigger group that want to really listen, and someone else that perhaps just wants to chat. So it's sort of balancing it all out really. But yeah, no, it's fun. It's fun. I enjoy it.
Thank you. Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Any other sort of questions or?
I'm going to spend the next half an hour colouring this in.
Yeah,
so.
it's good for sort of well-being and mindfulness. I think a lot of people find it quite relaxing, and I have done it with quite big schools. I did it with 80 once, all at once. Wow. So they had it all in their classrooms at the same time. That was in lockdown. But I did a lot of prep work with the teachers in advance, so we had a session and just checked all the technical side of the work and all that sort of thing. So it's possible, can access more people, and they were in Newcastle and I'm in Rugby, so that I never would have done that in that way before. So
yeah, that's the way we found it with online sessions, is one teacher books it and they think, oh, actually if there are 2 or 3 form entry, can every class just log in? And you're like, well, yeah, but that makes it quite difficult to keep track of.
Make any difference for this sort of thing, because it's not not as interactive as some things could be. They're mostly, the way we did it, the teacher gave me questions in advance that the children had asked, so I prepped an answer, and so I'd go, so Zoe asked me, and that worked really well, because then they felt they had an ownership sense, that their name had been read out and their question had been answered. And what else did we do in advance? There's quite a few bits that we sort of worked out in advance, so they could still show, like, hold up all their work, so they felt engaged in that way. But yeah, to me, in a way, because it was into the void, it didn't really matter. I didn't know there was that many. I thought there was only one class. It was only afterwards they told me it was that many. So actually, I could have had 500 and it wouldn't have made that much difference, really.
Lovely. Are there any final questions as we come to a close? No? Well, I hope that's been a very civilised and creative way to start everybody's Friday. Thank you ever so much, Jess, for guiding us through all those tips and tricks. And I hope that there's something that everybody can take away, either to use in your galleries or to start online teaching. I put some links in the chat if you want to share your work on social media, please tag in our hashtag sport and art, and some links to where you can find out more about the Art of Sporting Heritage Month. There's a lot going on social media, and we've got there's In Conversations video, films and podcasts on the website as well. So there's masses and masses of content and lots of different ways to get involved. So it just remains for me to say thank you everybody for your time today, and I hope you have a great rest of your Friday. Thank you.